In the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move.
I'm Paul.
I'm Steve.
And this is Check Your Shelf, the show where two lifelong friends talk about books and stories that they love and hate. And I thought, since this is our first episode and our first official foray into BookTube, I thought we would talk about one of, if not the most influential book in our lives. And that book, of course, is the Douglas Adams masterpiece, the first one, the first book in a five book trilogy, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Waiting for the applause to die down. Yeah, man, this is awesome. Check your shelf. I love, first of all, a little meta reference. First thing you got to do if you're listening is go check your shelf and see if you have a copy of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And if you don't, I was going to say shame on you, but I don't. I have it on Kindle. Does that count?
Yeah.
I do have it somewhere. It's just not on my shelf.
I had to do the audiobook this time for a refresher course because, as I said before we started recording, I have lost just that book. I have all the other ones, but somehow that book is gone.
Those of you who found your way here by way of the Don't Panic radio show, and those of you who can read our shirts.
That's right.
Obviously, the name of that radio show came from the Douglas Adams masterpiece, the first of the 5-part trilogy, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So to say it's been influential is a huge understatement.
Yeah.
I mean, this book for me has been, I've always felt weird and strange. And the main reason I have felt weird and strange is because people told me I was weird and strange when I was a kid.
You tell kids stuff.
It's true. And, I always had that quirky, weird sense of humor. Not everybody gets it. It's like food during a famine. Not everybody gets it.
That's right.
And this book was one of the early, along with like Dr. Demento and Monty Python's Flying Circus.
That's funny you bring that up, but go ahead and finish.
This book really was among the things that taught me that I might be weird and I might be strange, but there's a lot of other people out there whose sense of humor is weird and strange too, including my friend Paul. And it's comfort reading. Before Netflix started dropping entire seasons of The Office so that you could go back and have your, the kids these days, not my kids, but other people's kids, like got into Friends and stuff. Like it's like a comfort thing because you know what's going to happen. You're sort of hanging out with those characters and you get to re-experience something you've experienced before that you like. And you know how it turns out, whether or not everybody's going to be okay. So it's like a comfort read.
Yeah.
For me.
And because it's such a fast one too, it really makes you feel smart when you can finish a chapter in like 3 minutes because it's like, 5 pages long. The crazy thing about this book for me is it seems like it's always been in my life. And I did a little wiki research to kind of refresh my brain on stuff. And the craziest part about it is this book was only written, well, it was a radio play in like 1979 on the BBC. And by like 80, it was a book. And by 81, it was a TV, a BBC had a TV show. And it's because of, I'd seen one or two, episodes of the show, which, I didn't really understand what it was, but I was absorbing anything British back then because PBS would run it and we would watch it because it was somewhere else. And the humor just kind of spoke to me the way American humor doesn't so much speak to me. And first of all, I thought I was watching like an old show.
Oh, right.
But it was only like a year old,
Yeah.
And between watching a couple episodes of the TV show and Dr. Demento used to play. There was a couple songs that they had put together that I guess the guy that did the voice of Marvin uh, did some of the music, for these songs, and so I was loving these songs. I didn't even really know it was a book. And then one night when I listened to Dr. Demento, he had mentioned that it was, it was a radio play. It got turned into a novel. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to find this novel. Now, I wasn't a reader. I have dyslexia, and it's difficult for me to read sometimes. I really have to like focus on what I'm doing. So voluntarily, I hadn't really read much, other than short stories here and there. And I remember distinctly, dude, I think I was in the 8th grade. I remember distinctly. I think I was. No,
I have a very clear memory. I believe.
no. You called me up one day because you had to go to the library for like research for something, and I'm like, sure, I'll tag along because I wanted to get out of the house. So I'm standing there in the library, and I'm like, well, you're going through the card catalog, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is a library. Libraries let you check out books. I'm like, I didn't even have. This is a country we were. I didn't even have a book a library card. Oh, I was like, you got a library card? You're like, yeah. I said, I'm right back. So, fortunately, my mom was a librarian, so I figured out the Dewey Decimal System pretty easy. I tracked down Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They had all of them, but I just grabbed the one. I read that thing. Got home. I read it before supper. I went back and read it again. I read that book so many times. My parents wondered where I disappeared to. And that just like launched me into reading more than anything I ever did before. Like I'd read Wrinkle in Time and a couple other books, but not voluntarily. They were for book reports. But this book, I just ate it up, and yeah, it is absolutely responsible for probably like you said on one of our other shows, 97% of my sense of humor is from this book.
So my favorite story that I tell people about hitchhikers is
Mm-hmm.
I got to college and I was like a fish out of water. I was
Mm-hmm.
just lost, like, depressed and lonely and everything. And some upperclassmen invited me into one of it was like a Friday night, Saturday night, something like that. And they invited
Mm-hmm.
me into their room to hang out. It was a bunch of grade A, 100% nerds, right? So it was an engineering school. So everybody was nerdy to an extent, but
Yeah.
these were nerds among nerds, right?
Yes.
And I was like, we're just talking. They're making jokes that I thought were funny. I'm like, oh my God, these people are funny. And I thought of a Hitchhiker's reference that I was going to say. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, hey, has anybody in here read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? And one of the nerdiest guys, dude was so nerdy, he had a white dude with an afro and a big mustache. He just looks at me like I'm weird. And I was like, uh-oh,
Oh,
I'm messed up. But he
they're
goes,
like nerd.
he goes, if anybody in this room has not read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they would be weird.
Yeah.
And I was like, I
That's
have
how you know you
found
found your
I
people.
have found my people.
Well, the crazy thing about the book is like there's there's really not much of a plot to it. It's really just like a series of like understated jokes, you know? And to me, like every part of the book is quotable.
The thing about Douglas Adams that I've heard, he loved being a writer. He absolutely hated writing. And the only way that he ever wrote was past the deadline after procrastinating and like trying to hurry up and get something written. So he would have these jokes and then he'd go, well, I guess I want them to end up here.
Mm-hmm.
And then now he's got to go backwards and figure out how
Yeah,
to get them there.
yeah. It's
Or,
like writing a joke.
but there's one joke that took so long. Like, I don't know. It was in like 2 or 3 books later, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is a spoiler for like I forget if it was, I think it might have been Mostly Harmless where he meets Agrajag. Um, that joke of meeting Agrajag, for those
Mm-hmm.
of you who don't know, happens to be one of his his arch nemesis, even though he didn't know it. Um, it was this being that he kept killing, and then it would be reincarnated, and then he would kill it again. Only he had no idea he was doing it. Like it would just be through some accident. Arthur would accidentally kill this thing. Then it'd be reincarnated. He'd kill it again. So he finally meets. We don't know this until like I think it was Mostly Harmless, which is like the 5th in the series. But then if you go all the way back to the first book, there's a joke that you have no idea why that joke's there.
Right.
It's a maybe at some point we should summarize the plot because there is a plot. It's
we'll get to that. We'll get to the plot.
We'll get to the plot. But there's like through a weird, highly improbable thing, like a bowl of petunias is created and is falling from the sky, and the bowl of petunias says, "Oh no, not again." You have no idea why it said that in this novel. It just said it. And 5 books later, you finally find out why that bowl of petunias said that. So I don't know. In other words, what I was trying to get at with that was a long way about it. What I was trying to get at is I don't know if I completely believe him, where he says, I write the joke and then figure out how to get there, unless he was like, this guy, Arthur, this is going to be a joke. I don't know when I'll get to it, if ever. But I'm going to sprinkle little things because eventually he's going to meet this guy.
Yes. But even the flower pot full of petunias, saying, "Oh no, not again," in and of itself, if you would have just never followed up on that, was hilarious.
That's funny.
Because why?
Exactly.
Why would he say that? But you just, okay, I've made a deal with this book.
Yeah.
That I'm not going to understand all of it.
Yeah. For people who haven't read it, and I believe that there are friends of ours and family members who they know we love the book. They've heard us quote it a lot. They've heard us talk about it, but they haven't read it. And so maybe this is an opportunity for them to hear what this book actually is.
If you were to tell somebody, this is the story about a guy who basically gets sort of more or less abducted by aliens shortly before the Earth gets destroyed, goes on a series of wacky adventures, and finds out in the end that the Earth was a supercomputer designed to ask the ultimate question to the ultimate answer, which they already had. But since the Earth was destroyed, his brain was one of the most sought after things in the universe. And at the end, they all decided to go to the restaurant at the end of the universe. What the hell kind of plot is that? They will look at you the same way your parents would have looked at you at like 14 if you would have said one of the funniest parts of this book. They would look at you like, I don't get kids today.
Well, the other thing I read, the reason that the first book ended so abruptly was he was behind. And so as you mentioned, this started as Douglas Adams just liked coming up with these stories, but he didn't really have he submitted some stories to I forget where, but some British, the BBC, to try to get his sketches on their shows. And he kept getting turned down. But one guy saw what he was writing and was like, this is really good. It just doesn't fit anything we're doing. So let's create your own thing. Right.
Yeah.
So they created these radio plays. And then at some point they became really popular. So they said, you should write a novel. He's like, okay. So he was way behind schedule, way past the due date. And they basically just tore it out of his hands. So wherever he was when they tore it out of his hands is what you get in the first novel.
Well, the writing past deadline, as much as I love this book, and I dearly love it, obviously, as much as I love this book, there are areas where I think that shows. Yeah. Like he would put, like, for instance, the gargle blaster, the drink,
the Pan-Galactic gargle blaster.
And what was it he called the laser guns that the two cops were shooting at them?
Something blast-o-matic or blast.
Yeah. Those to me seem like stand-in phrases for something that he maybe come back and fix later, because so much of it is very meticulously put together, but just to throw these nonsensical, words in there to kind of as space fillers.
Yeah.
I wonder if that might be why some of it stands out like that so much. Other than, of course, there's also a level of silliness that you
He
know.
wanted a he wanted a name for Slartibartfast
Mm,
that would would make the editors insane. Like
yeah,
he wanted something that would make them go, it's not quite dirty,
yeah,
but it sounds dirty.
yes,
But he's
and
like, but it's
that
not dirty.
that to me, Slartibartfast name was the name that irritated me so much when I was a
Yeah.
kid because I thought it was so dumb. But now it's great. I absolutely love it.
Let me take a quick stab at I don't know if it's the plot or if I'm just going to describe what happens in the book. But you've got, I mean, what is plot? Plot is characters who want something and
Hmm.
they encounter obstacles toward getting it, right?
Hmm.
So Arthur, one of the main characters, lives on Earth and his home is about to be demolished to make way for a new highway. His friend, who he thinks is from nearby, actually isn't from nearby. He's actually an alien that's been stuck on Earth for 15 years because
Hmm.
Earth is such a backwater planet. He's a hitchhiker, and no flying saucers have come by in 15 years to pick him up. But he notices that his little electronic thumb, which hails spaceships, is going crazy. So he grabs
Hmm.
Arthur and says, "We got to drink a bunch of beer and eat some peanuts because we're about to experience something." And Arthur
Yes.
has no idea what's going on. So yes, then the Vogons show up. The Vogons are these bureaucratic. I have another thing to say about the Vogons when if we get to the point in this episode where we talk about some of the deeper themes of the
Hmm.
book.
Hmm.
I have a point about the Vogons. But anyway, they are destroying the Earth to make way for a hyperspatial highway. So obviously
Yeah.
it's like a on the nose joke, right? So Arthur and his friend Ford get rescued by the workers, not by the Vogons, but
Yeah.
by the Dentrasi, who are the servants and
Yeah.
the workers, right? So
Yes.
it's like the working class solidarity, right? They love
Hmm.
picking up hitchhikers, partly for working class solidarity, but mainly because it annoys the Vogons. And there's
Yes.
nothing they love more than annoying Vogons, right?
Yes.
Meanwhile, this other dude named Zaphod gets appointed, elected, somehow becomes president of the universe, president of the galaxy, right? And they make the point that nobody, under any circumstances, who wants to be or can figure out a way to make themselves president, under no circumstances should they be allowed to. But he steals this spaceship called the Heart of Gold, and it has an infinite improbability drive, which allows them to be anywhere and everywhere in the galaxy all at the same time. So that's why improbable things keep happening because of this
Yes.
ship.
Yes.
So the Vogons find Arthur and Ford, throw them off the ship. They're in space for less than 13 seconds before the
Yeah.
Heart of Gold comes and scoops them up. And
Hmm.
that's where they meet Marvin. Marvin, the paranoid android, is a robot that he serves Zaphod on this Heart of Gold. Zaphod also has with him another Earthling
Yes.
named Trillian, who Arthur has met before. So they rescue them. They meet this robot, who, by the way, is miserable.
Yeah.
Be- be-
What's this whole brain the size of a planet and they have me opening doors?
I think that Adams was making a point about technology. Like, if you want a robot to be useful, it has to have emotions because only through emotions can you figure out what is going to be useful to humans.
Yeah.
And this one just happened to, they made a mistake and made him miserable.
Yes.
And he's hilarious. He's one of the most lovable characters in the whole thing.
Yes. Yes.
So, Zaphod isn't exactly sure how he became president or why, but he keeps having these ideas to do things.
Hmm.
Finds out somebody messed with his brain
Yeah. Somebody.
to keep him from knowing, and he's got two heads. So somebody
Yes.
messed with his brains to keep him from knowing what he's supposed to be doing. But what what they end up doing is finding this planet where they manufacture planets.
just the whole thing where he's noticing how flat the wall is,
Yeah.
and then they do the whole mathematical thing to show just how gigantic the wall and the fact that it's a sphere.
Yes, exactly. So they find the planet. The Slarta Bartfast guy is some old dude on the planet who's in charge of designing fjords for new planets. And the reason we find out the reason they're there is they had a couple stowaway mice on the ship. These little mice got rescued at the same time Arthur and Ford got rescued from Earth, and then they ended up on the Heart of Gold, and they made their way to this planet factory. The mice are super intelligent, pan-dimensional beings.
Yes.
Who had the Earth built originally millions of years ago as a supercomputer.
Yeah.
And the supercomputer got destroyed by the Vogons, so now they need a new one.
Yes.
What was the supercomputer for? Now we get to what people, what the reason I'm trying to go through this is people have heard things about the book, and I'm trying to put some context around it. The number 42, so these mice from another dimension, millions of years ago, designed and built a computer to give them the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And the computer, after like 7.5 million years, gave them the answer. And the answer, 42. So they're like, okay, but what does that mean? And the computer's like, well, that's the answer. You asked me to give the answer, give the answer. They're like, well, what's the question? And it thinks for a second and goes, well, I can't give you the question. That would require a better computer than me.
Yeah.
And the computer, I'll design the computer for you. You can have it built, and it will take 10 million years or something. So that computer is the Earth, and humans actually form part of the computer matrix.
Yeah.
All life forms do. All those experiments we do on mice are actually the mice doing experiments on us.
Yes.
And to Paul's point, they believe that Arthur, since he was there and he's human and he was there up to 5 minutes before the Earth was destroyed, that the question might be in his brain.
Yes.
Which they wanted to pop his head open, take his brain out.
We got to take it out first.
Using it.
What?
I happen to be using it most of the time. So they escape, but right when they escape, I believe it was the Vogons attack. Maybe it wasn't Vogons. It was somebody, some police force.
Yeah, it was
looking for Zaphod.
Yeah,
because Zaphod stole that spaceship, and then all of the police die, and we find out the reason they died.
The banter that the cops were yelling over is it's ridiculous.
That's
I'm a writer and I haven't sold anything in a while, so I'm in a really bad mood.
That's another one of those, like, Adams probably had this joke, like,
yeah,
what if you had some cops shooting at some people and they end up having this banter? Like, the only reason I'm shooting at you is because I'm a cop, and that's what cops do, right?
It's almost like Leslie Nielsen Police Story kind of humor for that moment.
Yeah. The cops end up dying because they're methane breathing, and this is a oxygen planet, and their suits fail. The suits, which were networked with their spaceship, which Marvin had gotten bored, plugged himself into the spaceship and started talking to him about his life. And the spaceship killed itself because it was so depressed. And then, of course, they all pile into the Heart of Gold, go off into space, and decide to go get lunch somewhere.
Yes.
So that's the plot. If you all like the plot is Earth gets destroyed, these mice need a new Earth. They manipulate the people into going to this planet factory to wake it up and make a new Earth. Now, the main characters, Arthur, Ford. Arthur's just trying to figure out, like, now he's in this galaxy. There's no Earth anymore. His whole motivation is just like figuring out how to be in this galaxy, right?
Yeah. What was it Ford said about Arthur's brain? If you just ask, like, what where are we and when's tea? You'll pretty much
Yeah.
have him down.
Yeah. Here's a thought that I had, and we, on a separate channel, we reviewed The Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. And I suppose you might re-edit it and put it on this channel so people will get to see
I
that.
plan to, yes.
But if you compare, this is going to be a stretch. You ready for this?
Sure.
Maybe we should limber up first.
Get some stretches.
Yeah, get some stretches in. Oh, by the way, why am I wearing a robe? Why is Paul wearing a robe? I forgot to get to that.
Oh.
Then we'll get to Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Arthur had just gotten up in the morning when Ford grabbed him and they went hitchhiking onto the Vogon ship. And so he was still wearing his dressing gown.
Yes.
The towel, Ford told him to bring a towel, and there's a list of at least my arm's length long of why it's a good idea if you're hitchhiking across the galaxy to have a towel. It's so important and so useful that people just seeing you with a towel will assume you've got everything together. Like, instead of saying that cat's got his stuff together, they'll say, look at that Hoopy Frood. Hoopy means like hip. Frood is like cool dude. He really knows where his towel is.
Mm-hmm.
So Paul and I know where our towels are. They're right here.
Right. At all times. Yes,
and we were wearing our dressing gowns. So Lovecraft was basically saying humans are inconsequential because there's this vast galaxy out there with incomprehensibly greater beings, right? With incomprehensible powers that humans can't even contemplate. In fact, they're so incomprehensibly great, they might have just made humans as like a joke, right? And so humanity's not even a speck on a speck of dirt as compared to the galaxy and the greatness that lies out there, right? That's Lovecraft. Adams is saying, yeah, that's true about humans. And it's true about every being in the galaxy everywhere. And the reason, like every single being, the galaxy in general, the stars, anything that you could find, no matter how magic it might seem or how great it might seem, it's inconsequential. It doesn't matter. There is no meaning. And none of us have any idea what anything's about. And by us, I mean every single being, no matter how intelligent in the universe, even hyper intelligent shades of the color blue, don't know what's going on. And in fact, one guy says in one of the books, no, I think it was Slarta Bartfast might have said it. He said he figures the chances of figuring out what's actually going on are so remote that you might as well not even try and just try to keep yourself occupied.
Yes.
So that was my Lovecraft versus Adams view of the universe.
Funny. It's funny that you would say that because for the longest time, like I've said before on other episodes of other shows, which I'll put a bunch of links down below. What I knew about Lovecraft before really reading him, starting to really read him a couple years ago, a lot of his thought processes about like that made me think the man was like British or English because it has that sensibility about it. It wasn't until I really sat down and focused that I realized, no, wait, he's from like New England or wherever the hell. So no, that is not a stretch.
I could see Adams reading Lovecraft and going, okay, it's like he's trying to set out this explanation that it's useless for humans to try because we are so insignificant compared to the beings that are out there. I could see Adams reading that and going, I get that it's useless to try, but there's nothing greater out there.
But it needs a joke right here.
It needs a joke right here. You compare that to sort of the general, we're always, got to go to Mars next. Then once we've gone to Mars, got to go to Jupiter. And it's like this human yearn for striving and finding answers to why are we here? And Adams comes along and just says, you can't know both why we're here and you can't know the question and the answer in the same universe.
Yes. Yes.
Even evolution, like you might go, well, then explain evolution to me. Like evolution, survival of the fittest and always evolving better. And then I told you I'd get back to the Vogons. Then you get to the Vogons and you go, no, evolution took one look at them and said, that's enough. That's enough of that. We'll concentrate on other things.
Yes.
So those are all my, what's it all about? It's about nothing but occupying yourself, trying to have a good time. That was Ford. And Zaphod like embody that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They embody just try to have a good time.
Speaking of Ford and Zaphod, I was thinking about this the other day, like how my views on characters have changed. Because when I read this when I was a kid, I thought Zaphod was hilarious. I thought he was my favorite character. He was just, I mean, Marvin notwithstanding, because Marvin was great. He's his own thing. But I thought Zaphod was just the coolest character ever. You know, the hip out to lunch president or whatever it was that they called him. But as an adult, I have come to appreciate Arthur so much.
Yeah.
You know, and just get so annoyed at Zaphod. And so like, okay, so he wasn't writing that for me. He was a close to a middle-aged man at that point in his life. So he's not writing that for me.
And Arthur was only like 30 years old.
Yeah, exactly. But he's a British 30, which is an American 55. So
good point. Yeah, I said corrected. I really identify with Arthur through a lot of it. I identify with Ford sometimes. Although, Ford is my friend Greg from college.
From what I remember about Greg, yeah, I can see that.
It's here's a thing we could do in a place we can go to have a good time. Yeah. And I'm the Arthur that goes, ooh, really? I don't know. Seems risky. Seems dangerous. He's like, no, it'll be great. Come on.
Yes. Arthur is basically Hobbit Bilbo. You know, he's like, I don't know. You know, adventures make one late for supper.
Yeah, exactly. All he wanted was some tea.
That's right.
And I actually use the phrase, like he got some tea out of one of the machines on the ship, but it wasn't tea. It was a hot beverage a lukewarm beverage that tasted almost, but not entirely unlike tea.
Yeah. See, that's the stuff I love. And a lot of times when I'm like workshopping a joke, it doesn't come out like it's supposed to the first time because I'm trying to get it right, as I go along. And that kind of phraseology is just it's what I strive for, man.
Yes. Me too. I want to come to one of your workshops.
Well, there's barely enough room up here for me.
So I would say on a scale of 4 and 3 and 2 and 1, I would give this a 4 or a 5. And I would recommend anybody read it. Even if you're not into that kind of humor, it's easy, it's fast, it's, there's nothing to it.
Read it. There's numerous audiobooks if you don't want to actually read the book.
Yeah.
If you want to, if you got like a 5-hour flight, boom, trust me, it's going to make that flight go by fast.
True.
I give it a 5 out of 4, dude. I've told you before that how much I adore So Long and Thanks for All the Fish and why I do. Mm-hmm. But without Hitchhiker's Guide, there would be no fish. So 5 out of 4. Right. It's the one I'll go back to. It's the one I've read the most, Yeah.
I have 2 comfort series. Mm-hmm. One is this, and the other is Lord of the Rings. So if I just want to read something to make myself feel better, I read one of those 2. So.
I love how your comforts are. I like this and I like this. This giant weighty work of fiction. But I also like this thing. This thing is like a crepe. This thing is like a buckwheat cake. It's just thump.
Other
All
than
right.
all of that, I really haven't thought much about this book.
Yeah. All right. Well, so this is our one of our new projects. We're gonna try to do it weekly. We're not always gonna do the same book that we both read. We're gonna like I've got books and stories that I want to introduce Steve, and by extension, you guys out there. And I'm sure he's got some stuff he wants to talk about. Uh, the sky's the limit as far as what book and story related we're going to talk. Might even bring up comics. I got because I subjected Steve to some comics a number of years ago because he, in spite of my best efforts, isn't a comic book guy. So I'm Paul,
I'm Steve.
and the next time you're looking for something to read,
Check your shelf.